Hey, good to see all of you. I have this habit of starting my events 15 minutes early just in case there's any sound issues. I'd like to invite some of you to the stage. First and foremost, Barely Jack, Janelle, Fiona, and the thing that I'm trying today is a new format that's somewhere between a conversation and a debate, but it's more like a conversation. Barely Jack and a few others had brainstormed this idea to me. It was initially proposed as a debate format. But the more I heard out the idea, the more it sounds like a dialogue. A forum for people to deep dive into a topic and dissect it to a sufficient level of depth. Today I picked the topic manners, so we'll be starting very soon. And just give Fiona some time to change her device. Janelle, Barely Jack, please, whenever you're ready, join me on the stage and I'll be starting the event very soon. Welcome to the room, Floopy, Eris. Hello, Barely Jack. Thank you for joining me.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Pardon?
No, I was just saying hi.
Hi. Well, I have been waiting for you to host this idea because this is your original idea. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm sure my interpretation of this will be different from yours, but I believe both you and I are quite open-minded on the outcomes and we can keep iterating.
Yeah, I like the essence of it. So the essence of it is very similar to what I have in mind, but I was kind of procrastinating slash afraid to take up the
What are you
initiative.
afraid of,
So,
Barely Jack?
I mean, not anything in particular. It's just some in my head. I've been like kind of going through some things for the past some time, so I haven't gone around to doing it. So it's nice that you took up the initiative. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the event and how it goes. Very exciting.
Likewise, I look forward to it as well.
Hmm.
An audience member ... You can't hear anything. There is an audio troubleshooting guide. If anyone's listening, there is a pinned message in server help. That's where you will be able to find a pinned message that includes the Discord guidelines on troubleshooting. So ... I know you can't hear me, and I hope one of you, I'm a slow typer on server help. A bot message has just been posted about 40 minutes ago. And there is a section, Get Help with the Discord. And if you look at the second hyperlink, that includes the troubleshoot audio and the video. So I hope I can see Barely Jack is typing. When I'm hosting a stage event, my typing capability is always impaired. So thank you so much for your help. Now I'm going to start the event. We're right on time. Everyone, and by the way, this event is recorded. It's mainly for my own educational and learning. I'll rewatch and see what I can improve on. And if there's nothing sensitive and no one objects, I don't mind posting it as one of the YouTube channel videos as well. For those who can't make it live, I recognize that I posted the event just an hour, less than an hour before the event start time, which is quite unusual. This would be considered one of those spontaneous events. Thank you everyone who just joined us. My name is Y. I'll be your moderator. Our topic for discussion is the relevance of manners in contemporary society. I recently picked up Emily's Post's Etiquette. It's a voluminous book on the subject. While part of me is eager to adopt proper etiquette in my daily interactions, another part of me questions the relevance of some of these norms in today's world, and whether a more relaxed approach to manners has its own merits. So that's where we're going to start with today's dialogue. And Barely Jack, why did you leave the stage? Now I feel that I'm talking to myself. It's a dialogue between multiple individuals. The question here is, are manners still important? And let me just repeat what I just said for those who just joined us. Whether some of the more traditional social etiquette is still relevant in our daily interactions, or a more modern, relaxed approach has its own merits. That will be today's dialogue topic. And for those who have been listening, since we all have met on Discord, and this is the platform that we are interacting on, I'll start with this question. What do manners on Discord mean to you? Can you share some examples of good and bad manners? And let me repeat the question. What do manners on Discord mean to you? And can you share examples of good and bad manners? I'm going to invite Janelle up to the stage and Fiona. For everyone else, I'm not sure if you want to participate or not, so feel free to raise your hand. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a couple of buttons. One of them is a raise hand button. So you can click raise hand to get on the stage. Welcome, Janelle, Barely Jack, and Fiona. Welcome to our first The Mouthfuls Dialogue stage event. I'm not sure how much you heard what I said to open the event. The first question that we want to look into is, what, in your opinion, how do you define manners on Discord? And give some good or bad examples of manners. So that's what we're talking about today. Think about that for a moment, and I don't mind opening it up. To me, Discord is a virtual platform, but it's also behind every account. There's a real individual, real person behind it. So I think manners in real life still apply on Discord. And there might be, Discord has its own ways and what's considered polite versus not polite. But I do think manners apply. And some of the good examples of manners are, I really love, I don't do that often enough. In that way, I'm not polite enough. But I really love that people send hello, everyone, in the morning when they wake up, and thank people for helping them. That's another good manner. And a bad example of an example of a poor manner, for example, someone who joins the server and the first message they sent was, the server is dead. And to me, the real life example of that is someone who walks into a house and say to the people who live in the house that the house is dirty. So those are some of my good and bad examples. I'm going to open up. Who wants to talk first?
Um, for me, the first thing I thought of when about manners on Discord is for good manners, it's just for me, it's respecting the other members, like on the server. I think a lot of we were talking about how there's many different cultures and backgrounds here, but good manners will just I feel like respect those differences. And then an example of bad manners that I can think of is in this platform is people who might not be as willing to listen. Some I've encountered people where they they really don't care enough to listen to other people, and I thought that was not good manners. Those are things I could think of.
Yeah, I can echo that. Being part of a global community, there ought to be differences from one culture to another culture. And the ability to have an open mind and to listen is really important to bridge that differences and refuse to listen. Close your mind, refuse to listen. That is a great example of a not so good manner. Thank you, Janelle.
Yeah, thank you.
I invited up Eris to the stage because he made a really interesting comment. I believe he was referring to my example of someone who walks into someone else's house and the first comment being the house is dirty. How do you reconcile honesty with the manners?
I mean, yeah, that is very hard because when someone enters your house, and if your house is dirty, so they will say, "What is this mess? You're living in a mess." So, on the but you find them, you tell them you have very bad manners. You have very poor manners. Is it because you don't like their honesty, or is it maybe some qualities which you consider good but other people consider unorganized or disorganized? So it is sometimes it is very hard to make to differentiate between poor manners and some real honesty.
So, is manners and honesty mutually exclusive? Could you be honest and have a not so good manner at the same time?
Mm, yeah, that is very interesting, I guess.
To me,
Yeah,
the opposite of a good manner or a bad manner, and this is obviously a pair of opposites, but the opposite of honesty is dishonesty, is a lying.
yeah,
And these two are two concepts, and it's interesting to put them together to see if there is a link between the two. Does anyone else want to talk about this?
Yeah, I'll take on the honesty and manners part of what Iris brought up, and I think he also kind of ended with a question. So my point was, the thought that I had was, manners, like being honest to someone can still come off as poor manner, because what we think is being honest, as being truthful, can be wrong. So it can be biased. It can be, so if I tell someone something bad, thinking that I'm being honest, if that thought, that the thing that I'm about to say comes from a biased point, come from something that happened in my day, and my mood is different, and the thing that I'm about to say is unfounded, or just like, if that's thing that I'm about to say, the negative thing, what is something that I probably wouldn't have said in a different time, then I think that's bad manners. That's you just not having a good manner, no? Because, like I said, honesty can be biased. The thing that I'm about to say can be wrong, I can always learn more about the situation. I can always gather some more insights into why the person, uh, you know, behaved the way, behaving the way he's behaving. So yeah.
That's a great insight. To go back to that example of someone walks into a house as a guest and first comment being, the house is messy. It could have been something that happened earlier that day that biased the opinion, and he wouldn't have said that had that not happened. How about Barely Jack, coming back to you? What about honest opinions? Honest opinions that are unbiased, truthful opinions. Is there also something to be said about how an honest opinion involving criticism being delivered in a respectful versus disrespectful manner? You've talked about opinions that are biased or can potentially be untrue. Now let's move on to the other opinions that are truthful. Is there something to be said about manners in the case that the opinion is honest and objective?
I think a very important thing to keep in mind when I'm commenting on someone will be awareness of the comment that's going to have on the person. So when I'm about to comment on something about you, let's say I'm about to say something to you about something you did, I am aware, right? I am aware of what you probably would think, or you probably would react. So there's awareness. I'm not just spewing something to myself. Like, I'm telling this to someone, so I know that it's going to be received. There's someone on the end of it who's going to process my comments. So after knowing that fact, after knowing the words that I'm about to say is going to be received and being processed by another human being, it has to have a human touch to it. No matter how or like true that fact is. So if you were my enemy, right? If you were my enemy and if you were my foe, then I can be honest and act or make it obvious in the words I tell you how you are my enemy. So I can tell you the fact and then tell you some which are still facts that can destroy you mentally. But if you were my friend, I could still give you the fact, the thing the honesty, the thing that happened, but still consolidate you for the thing that happened, because I know that you're going to probably feel bad. So bad manners will be, for me, knowing that you're my friend, or forget about friend or foe, it can be a neutral person. So a neutral friend, and then I go and assert my insecurities or my fear, or just trying to have a dominant side, and I just pull you down, because that's not something that I wouldn't want to be done to me by someone else. So yeah, I believe that I believe that if it would be a good mannerism for me to give you the fact, and if that fact is going to have a bad impact on you, you're going to feel bad, then I'm going to consolidate you. I'm not just going to give you the fact and then just stop.
There's so much kindness in the approach that you just talked about. And let me reiterate, Barely Jack, even when he has an honest, objective, and truthful comment to make, he would still consider the consequences, the impact of his comment to the other side, to the listener. Barely Jack, it takes a lot. It takes a lot for a person to be able to do that. It requires maturity, requires wisdom and social and emotional intelligence. And I have a question to you, Barely Jack, but since everyone else is listening and there are a few people, I wonder if they are waiting for their turn to speak. Who hasn't spoken yet? That's Fiona in ... and the rabbit in the hat. I don't have the exact speaking order, but I'm going to go with the speaking cue that I'm seeing. Fiona, would you like to talk about what we just talked about?
Yes, definitely. It's a very interesting thing because so it's evening now at my country. So right in the morning I was having this discussion with my father, and I literally use these words like, don't come to my home and tell me that there's dust in my drawing room. You stay in
What's the
stay in my
chance?
home. I don't know. I was like, when I heard that, I was like, whoa. That was
What
funny.
is the chance?
Yeah. So I was telling my dad, like, if the guest comes over, go to my drawing room, spend some time with me, understand how I work, understand how my living situation and everything, and then you can tell me, like, okay, I think you can work a little bit more on your drawing room, but at least spend some time with me. So when I was having this discussion, I was also telling my father, like, what could be the intention behind people who are like this? So the intention could be like, let me put this person down, right? Let me show that I am better than that person, right? Which ultimately stems from some sort of insecurity this person has. Otherwise, I don't think a person who's sensible, a person who has learned good manners would come to anyone's home and then start criticizing every nitty-gritty details of that person's home, right? I was telling my dad, like, Dad, it took us a while to build this home, right? It's a lot of effort. So just for somebody come in and, pick out dust particles, that shows poorly on the other person, not on me, not on the person who built this home, right? So that's that.
Fiona, just so understood you. So you were talking about your own home and you're no longer living with your parents and your father was visiting and he made a comment.
No. So
okay.
I am living in Bangladesh, and the culture is that we live with our parents unless until we are married off, or maybe we have a job where it's taking us outside the city. So if you don't live with your parents, it's really looked down upon in our culture.
I see.
So I stay with my parents. I was just telling my dad about this experience I had. Like, this was just an example that I gave my dad. So having said that, see, when Barely Jack talked about someone pulling you down, right? I also see some people considers like, if I put forward a feedback or if I put forward a criticism in a way where there are also factors that can trigger the other person, then the person in question might think that, okay, this is how I'm going to win this argument. Once again, his intention is something I will question. Like, is your feedback, is your intention to make things better? or just to trigger the whole system or trigger me, right? So those are like, sometimes if you just take away all the triggering words or triggering bad behavior of people, then maybe what they're saying isn't bad. And I think this goes in line with Barely Jack was saying, like if you're aware of how the other person might take your statements, then you can make proper statements, proper feedback, proper discussion, everything without triggering anyone or without, criticizing too harshly. So it's like it's all about the intention of the person who's speaking. And it's also about the self-awareness of that person. I believe manner is something that is within you and it's totally your responsibility to show it, right? We cannot feed you manners. It's in you already. It's your responsibility how you show it. And it also reflects on other people. On people, like it reflects on you, like how you were raised, what you do, what's your personality. Everything comes along with it. Yep, that's my viewpoint.
Yeah, yeah. The intention is really something that needs to be looked at here. And there's so many good points being brought up already. Honesty versus dishonesty, intentional versus unintentional. And what Barely Jack brought up about how to take the recipient's feelings into consideration.
And
Eris?
yeah, I mean, if it's about like parents, then I think parents don't usually care about the feelings of their children, like how they will receive our feedback. They will just be very honest. And we can't say them like, don't you have manners? You know?
Do
I just
all
wanted to say.
parents, so should parents be considerate of their children's feelings?
That's interesting. I mean, that is an interesting question.
And we will get into the social etiquette differences from one culture to another culture. I grew up with the parents who are very hands-off and open-minded, pretty much left me alone. And that's among the Asian families and their ways of parenting their children. I've heard the stories, and there's even a stereotypical term to describe parents from my culture to be tiger mom or tiger dad. And it's untrue for my family. And when I moved to Canada, and I've witnessed how Canadian parents parent their children, extremely polite and thoughtful. My boyfriend's sister, who has just had a child, the way they, in their household, the mother interacts with their father, the please and thank you, they do treat each other in a very polite way. And that's uncommon from my own culture. So there's definitely a cultural differences there, Eris. What you said is quite true in certain cultures and families. And there are also other parenting styles.
Yeah. There are very different culture in the world.
Yeah.
And people are very different. Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to go to the... Oh, I just had a question about what Fiona said, and also which was completed by Aris in my head. So Fiona talked about manner being something in ourselves, and it's our responsibility to show it. And that prompted me a question. to the difference between if, so the question is, do rules or just regulations in a community guide our actions, which is ultimately our manners, right? How we behave, how our actions are our manners, right? It's an attributing factor to our action. So manners are how we go about doing things, how we go about interacting with people. So I think it's an after the fact. A manner doesn't exist and then we do it, but we do it and then we call that the things that we did manners, how we did those things. So I think that that's the case. So do rules and regulations in a community or just life guide our actions, which ultimately result to our manners, or us, ourselves, our being guide our actions, which in turn guide our manner? So that was the question I had.
That's an excellent question. As a community leader, I'm very eager to hear what everyone thinks on this topic. There's two individuals on this stage who haven't spoken already. That's the rabbit in the hat and the ... Would either of you wanted to comment?
Hello everyone.
Hi.
I will. I would love to listen. ... If she wants to speak first. ...
Would you?
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to be last so that I could conclude everything, because I'm kind of taking notes right now. And I have many responses, so my train of thought isn't the best right now, but I could try.
Give it a try. Not until you have such a long list, you will give us a very long speech at the end. I would, between the two, I would prefer to speak when you have something on your mind. And there's no need to accumulate and give a conclusion at the end.
Yeah, but since we're talking about manners, I was thinking maybe I would leave the floor to everyone and not interrupt anybody, because they have their own, I guess, ideas. So yeah, that's why I chose to be less, like the last person talk. But it's okay. What's the question about?
The question Barely Jack asked, if I were to paraphrase, and Barely Jack, you can correct me anytime. In a community setting, do rules preemptively guide behaviors, or does each individual member of this community guide their own behaviors, given that manner is really a descriptor after the action?
That is a very good question, so thank you, Barely Jack, for asking that. I'll say it's a very difficult question to answer in one time. I would make a huge speech talking about this, but well, I'm going to just scratch the surface of it, and I'm just gonna say that actually people or society in general directs our way of behaving, and each society has their own way of talking or educating their kids or having their own household rules, because each of us has that, and we go alongside these rules. We do not have the right to go against them, because that would be viewed as being rebellious or not really polite. So yeah, politeness is partly rules that are set by each household or each society, but it can also be our own choice. For example, it's my choice to say hi or hello or ignore somebody, but then ignoring is also being a bad behavior, making others feel unseen or unnoticed or just disrespected. So thus, even though I'm not the best as being like an extroverted person, but I can still say hi, or even like a smile. For example, if you go around the street and look at somebody who has a bad day or seems angry or upset, if you just give them a smile, they would actually feel better, even though at first they wouldn't show it, of course. It doesn't matter if they show it, if they're happy or not, but it will actually, act towards their day. Like they're going to feel like there's one thing that was actually positive in my day. Somebody smiled at me. Yeah. And saying thank you, please, all these manners are kind of a must that should be applied in society, but people take their ease not actually applying them, and they don't really care. Though there are those who don't really care about anybody. They're just like, I'm not gonna say selfish, but it depends on where they have been educated, what have been they, or what are the things that made them not care. So it really differs, and people are different, but I would actually want and hope for a day where everyone would actually care for each other and, just give the least they can, at least. If they can't really make a big effort or a big, I don't know, movement to have a positive change in the world, they could at least do what people do, which is like either to help them with a smile or with a word, or maybe just write a note, a random note, like you're seen, you matter, you're loved, and just give it to a stranger. That's the least you can do in your day.
I like that a lot. You painted a vision for us where everyone's so kind and so polite to each other, make each other feel important and seen. It's a world I would want to be in, for sure. There's an interesting point that yes, go on.
I just said that I hope we can see this, inshallah, like, in some years, in the years to come. I hope that the new generations would build this society where people are kinder to each other. I really hope so.
I hope so too. Thank you for that. Now, ...
It was
has
my pleasure.
spoken.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. ... The rabbit in the hat.
I'm here.
Okay, what's your comment? You said you would speak last.
Well, yes, I prefer to listen first to just structure my ideas. Nothing very solid yet, but
Okay.
I'll try my best.
Okay.
But some interesting comments I heard from ... Like, I'd like to ask her, is she suggesting writing notes and handing out random people
Oh,
as
okay.
some...
Yes.
Is that a question? Should I answer?
Yes, please.
I would actually want to I'll briefly answer that question. I will stay on topic on the manners. Rabbit, I believe was saying that she's been taking notes of the discussions, and she's been a really good listener. She's been listening to the discussion, taking notes, and to formulate her comments. That's the point about taking notes. But I want to get back to the discussion topic about manners. I want to read out a comment from Noza, who has been listening. She says, how about comparing people saying, is this place dead, with the judgment certain people, extroverts, can have on you about being very introvert and less outgoing, and having only a few selected friends, so they don't understand why you don't go to parties every week. Noza, I'd invite you to get on the stage to talk about this, and I'll give you some time to work out your Mike. And Barely Jack, I want to go back to the question that you talked about. In a community setting, and brought up a wonderful point about, people come from different backgrounds in their upbringing and what they consider as polite or not polite. And to some, being brutally honest is their social norm. And to some, and Jordan Peterson had talked about his experience growing up in Calgary, there is a bantering and a roasting culture. The closer you are with your buddies, the worse you roast each other. And that's their way of communicating and showing closeness with each other. Now, when we get together in a public arena, how do you bridge the gap between, in this public arena, what's been announced as rules of engagement or etiquette, and each individual's own perception of social norm and what they consider as a polite? Barely Jack, do you want to comment on that?
Can you repeat again? Sorry, I was processing the question again.
Yes. Earlier talked about polite and what's considered as a polite in a public setting, the community setting. But each individual's own upbringing affects how they perceive as polite, as good manners. Now, going back to your question earlier in the community setting, even with announced rules of etiquette, each individual's background affects how they interpret the rules. And I give you 2 examples. Jordan Peterson, he grew up in a background where roasting shows friendship. The worse you roast your friend, the closer you are with your friend and have a good laugh. That's their culture. That's Jordan Peterson's culture. And how do you bridge that gap between the community's commonly accepted etiquette and each individual's own interpretation of etiquette?
Interesting. Very, very interesting question. And okay, interesting. I will say this though. I think, to get to the question before that, for me, right, this is what I got during the comments. So there's some rules in any community, in any society, right? So if you follow the rules strictly, that's the minimum requirement, or what we expect from you. That's being a citizen. So if you are going to be a citizen or a community member, you have to follow those rules. But if you go out of your way to do something bad, out of the rules, then you're being a bad community member. There's no other way, right? If you go out of the rules, then you're being a bad member. And if you go out of your way to do something nice, then you're being a very good citizen, being a very good member. So given that, right, the gap between the public setting and the how people bring about and show their manners, I think we first have to really understand that not everyone is going to fit in every community, in this community also. So if I go about, or just not everyone in the world is going to come into this community and be accepted, because there's going to be English barrier, language barrier. There's going to be very good mannered people that doesn't speak the English language that we.
I can't hear Barely Jack all of a
sorry
sudden.
about
Is it the
mic.
same? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you were saying, for example, people who don't speak English or there's a language barrier and you got cut off there.
So what I was trying to say, to sum it up, will be there are just going to be some people with their backgrounds that doesn't fit our community. That's not our fault, right? That's why we have the rules. We expect the rules that we specify to be the minimum. Those are the qualities that we want to have in this community. And if someone comes in and they don't fit the rules, they don't fit the criteria, they don't fit the minimum requirement that we expect from our members, then we have no other way than to, like not allow them to be in this community anymore. And that's just how it's going to be, and yeah, so that's what I think.
Thank you for
because
that.
there's going to be different people with different backgrounds, and we cannot like go about and reason why they don't think the same way we want them to, why they don't follow the rules. Their intention has to follow their behaviors have to follow the rules at the end of the day. So yeah.
Sometimes I am learning and I'm taking notes figuratively, because as a community leader, I do have the permissions to allow or disallow a member to be a part of this community or not. But most of the time, I feel humility for having that permission. Sometimes I doubt myself on whether to stay true to who we are and who we are not, or to be open-minded about newer behaviors. And I often find myself struggle with that. And thank you, Barely Jack, for highlighting that at the end of the day, we have our own purpose in the culture. And we cannot be a place for everyone. And we have to stay true to who we are and who we are not. Does anyone else want to talk about this?
Hi, yes, I have some points I'd like to add to this. So I think the topic that you mentioned was roasting shows friendship and how do we bridge that gap, right?
Yeah.
Even in this Discord server or community that we have. So I think what I focus on first is when you are roasting or when you have that kind of a personality, first thing is like, is the other person comfortable with it? Because there are people who enjoys this banter, roasting and whatnot. So find your right partner to do that with. There is this thing among people, they think if I can roast another person, then the other people are having something funny, are seeing something funny, and when I am being funny, then my social status, even in this Discord, is rising up. They have this mentality working within them, right? So, but they're not considering like how it is making the other person feel, right? So that awareness, and if the other person is comfortable, then you can go for it. Otherwise, this is literally bullying, because the other term for roasting is bullying. It only depends on the two people involved in that roasting dialogue. If not, it is a bullying. Another thing
such a
is
fine line between the two, bullying and the roasting. You're absolutely right. Da says, I agree with Fiona. Go on.
And the other thing is like, I think I was reading in the comment, like someone was talking about extrovert and introvert. It's probably Nozer, right?
Yes. Well, I brought her up to talk about that, elaborate on that. Yeah, go on.
Yes. So even two introverts, they can also roast each other. But you know what happens? It depends on the quality time they spent with each other. By that time, they know each other. Where I will agree with Jordan Peterson, because he said the more friendship, the stronger the friendship is, the worse the roast is. See, Jordan Peterson is not saying that I go around, I meet someone and I roast that person on the spot, right?
No, not at all. I
Like
think
the death
he's
event,
talking about in Calgary, in the farm that he
right?
lived around the bonfire with
Right.
his close friends, not going around and
Exactly.
roasting other people.
Exactly. So yeah, if you're in any server and like you have formed at that deep connection, that deep friendship with people, then you may roast. But once again, you already by that time know to what extent you can go, right? You already have that awareness. So I think those are the important things, like making sure roasting is not translated into bullying. Roasting is not for your own social level high rise up, and making sure the person you're doing it is like you have a quality time already built with that person. And then everything is okay. Otherwise, it's bullying. Yep, that's all from my end.
Thank you, Fiona. Well said. I am catching up on the text log. And I know that ... you want to talk about this. I've seen your comment on roasting. What do you have in mind ... Is there a better way to address you, or would you prefer to be called ...
Well, you can just call me May. I'm gonna change my username soon.
Okay.
Since ... is not really functional.
So May as May?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, there we go. I changed your nickname, so it's
Thank you so
apparent to
much.
people. Okay, there we go.
All right. Well, in terms of roasting, as I said earlier in the chat, I think that it should be targeted to the right people, and also I'm not going to use that, I don't know, like joke kind of roast with anybody. I have to be sure that I'm familiar with the people I'm using them with, because I know that they're not going to take it personally or offensively. It's just using it with the right people the right way. If you're not really familiar with anybody and you just decide to be foolish, and not really foolish, but like just be spontaneous and talk with newcomers or someone you don't know and start roasting them out of the blue, it might be acceptable to some because they might have that shield that is protecting them from being offended or, just taking it personally. And they might accept it, but there are some, and few people I know were hurt by these roasts, and they were like, I don't know, I just don't feel welcome. I don't feel appreciated by people when they roast me. And I'm like, yes, that's valid, because they did not really consider knowing this person before roasting them. So this is the line that you have to not cross when it comes to roasting. You have to know the person before roasting them. And of course, you would not take your ease with anybody else when it comes to this.
Yeah, I agree.
I hope
I agree
my
what
point
you
is
said.
understood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Janelle, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
I just think that it's very interesting. I think it goes back to what Barely Jack was saying earlier about being aware or sensitive about how what you will say will impact others. It's the same for roasting and considering the fine line between roasting and or bullying, where you have to consider the dynamic between you and the person, or and other factors like that. I also think the discussion earlier about intent is critical in this discussion, just because I mean it might not be the intent to be disrespectful or hostile from the other person, but the way that, or what the other person might have said, say, hey, this server is dead, maybe or this house is messy. Maybe that was not the intent to upset another person by that comment, but again, being sensitive and considerate to how that might have been received is something that I think is important when it comes to manners, but not everyone might be sensitive to that always.
And I've been wanting to ask your advice on this, Janelle. So in the path from being strangers to warming up to each other and becoming friends, that tricky spot before you have become friends, there is that testing of bantering, see how your jokes are being received. What are some of the guidelines in terms of good mannerism to follow, to navigate during that phase from being strangers and being polite and formal and professional to starting to get more relaxed and casual?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm not sure for other people. I feel like it's how the other person will test that threshold. I feel like both people might just be gauging each other for their threshold on what they can take or what jokes or comments they can make, and eventually once each person can see or kind of gauge that, then that's where they go off of. I don't know how to explain it, but it's something like that. Just seeing how the other person is going, or is how they're creating that boundary, and just reflecting off of that as well. And if you see that the other person is not is simply professional and or just not in that line or boundary where they want to cross certain things in terms of professionalism or being super casual, then I would just respect that and or reciprocate that, what they are giving, the energy that they are giving, if that makes sense.
You describe it, it's almost like a dance. You kind of give cues and take cues and to gauge what that threshold is with each person that you interact with.
Yeah. Something like that.
Tracy, you've been up on the stage, you've been listening. I saw a comment from you, something like you roast every day. Would you like to share your thoughts?
That's pretty funny. Yeah, I roast myself quite often. I can't lie.
You roast yourself.
Yeah, myself.
We were talking about roasting between friends.
So, I'm black, right? So, black people roast each other a lot. Like, when I say a lot, I mean a lot. A lot. So, I would definitely say that, yeah, the dynamics between the two people matters a lot in that case, because usually people don't like it when someone they don't know or isn't really that funny is just, roasting them and having them be the at the back end of all their jokes, especially when it seems like it's targeted to, if you're just targeting a certain person, definitely doesn't feel nice at all. Definitely doesn't. Sometimes it might just come out of nowhere, right? I mean, you might just be friends with somebody and you're not friends for that long though, right? Only been friends for a day and you start roasting them, it's like, doesn't feel too nice. But maybe if you were friends for a good 2 months, talk to each other every day, at the very least, maybe they might feel more comfortable to talk back to you the same way. It's always a lot better than just, you doing all the roasting. So
So Tracy,
my
it sounds like you come from a background where roasting is a sign of endearment. It's a sign of friendship. It's closeness.
Yeah.
And even you
Yes.
believe that there's that gradual progress between between two individuals, the relationship from, you know, you meet this person for a day to you meet them for a couple of months and playing games together. There's a question from the audience from Azork. He wants us to talk about the difference between bullying and roasting. That's a concept brought up by Fiona. In your opinion, what would be bullying? What would be that threshold that's just way too much? Can you give us an example?
Well, you can definitely tell. An example would be if someone makes you the blunt of their jokes and they make sure that everyone around also knows that the jokes they're saying about you are that important, right? So they make sure that, you know, they get as many people to hear as possible. They're like, you know, my joke was pretty funny, yada, yada, yada. That's pretty much bullying at that point, right?
Sorry, say that again. What was bullying at that point?
I said that's bullying at that point. When someone wants to have everybody like listen in on their jokes every time they say something about you, you know, that's like that's bullying at that point. My bad, I just woke up, bruh. I might not be speaking correctly, but you know.
Eris hasn't spoken for a while. Where is Eris? Okay, I think he left. How about others? May, it looks like you want to talk about this as well. May, what's the difference? What's the line between bullying and roasting? May, if you're talking, you're muted.
Sorry, I was talking to my mom. What was the question?
At the line between bullying and roasting.
Okay, so for me, bullying is more of the intention of wanting to offend someone. It's all in the intention, and I also mentioned the tone. For example, if someone wanted to roast you, as in friendly, you would actually hear. Like, for example, I would go to a friend of mine and say, what are those? Like, for example, when it comes to shoes or whatever. And it's going to be a, you know, friendly tone. It's not going to sound like, oh my God, what are those? You know, like there's a change, you see? There's a shift of tone, and you can actually just pick up when it's bullying and when it's not bullying. And it's just, you know, a joke or something. And it also goes along with the people you know, the people you're familiar with. Like, you wouldn't roast someone that is new, you know? I heard a comment, or I read a comment here saying that if you, it's really funny here. Only highly narcissist and high trait in psychopathy do this at the beginning. Like, it's funny, I read it, and it's actually accurate. So I feel like it's not really right to use roasting with people you barely know or people you just knew, you know. If you actually been just watching how the conversation goes with them and see that they're okay with, you know, jokes or making jokes with roasting, then you could take your ease a little. But if they're not and they didn't show any sign of being at ease that way, I feel like it's better not to, because then you don't have any problem. You would not have any problem, or you would not appear as being rude to them.
Great points. I've invited Noza up to talk about her point on introverts versus extroverts. Noza, would you like to talk about it?
Yeah. What do I need to say?
Okay, I'll give you a moment to find your post. Now, going back to what we talked about in the community setting, is there responsibility or any responsibility that a bystander, a person who's observing a roasting or bullying happening, is there anything that they need to do? And I'd like to differentiate. There are bystanders as members, regular members, and there are also moderators who are observing roasting happening. Should they do anything, or should they just allow the two people who are roasting each other to sort them out themselves? Who wants to talk about this?
I'll go if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And I'll just slowly touch on the previous one, which is the line between bullying and teasing,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't mind. Yeah. So I think for me, the line between a bully and just a friendly tease is like May said, it's in the intention. But I think what I saw is that it's, if there's a deficit in me, right? There's a deficit in me that is being met when I bully someone, or when I tease someone, when I roast someone, and I do it continuously, which means I'm deriving pleasure from it, which means I enjoy doing it, right?
That's such an
I have a
interesting
biological
insight.
need.
Yes, I can see that.
So if I have a biological need and I am like kind of addicted to it in a mental, in a psychological level, then I'm a bully. So the example I'll use is a difference between an accidental murderer and a serial killer. So if I got into an argument and things got out of hand and I accidentally killed someone, God forbid, then I'll be a murderer, but still that was a manslaughter. That's something, wait, I don't know if I'm using
not
the term right, but
premeditated.
that's something that, without a previous intention, right? But if I'm a serial killer, then I enjoy killing people. I enjoy ending people's life, right? So going back to the bully and teasing and roasting, if I just do it for the sake of it, do it for being friendly and pointing out the irony and absurdity in someone's manners in the exact moment, then it would be me being roasting someone and teasing someone. But if I do it consistently and I go out of my way to break the rules and consistently pick to have bad manners and bully someone, because I derive pleasure from it, mind you, then I think that's a bully.
So there's that psychological fundamentals behind a bully versus that, more spontaneous, in the moment for the fun of it, teasing.
Yeah. And going back to the question, I'll just say that because I'll feel bad if I don't answer the question.
Go on.
Responsibility of a bystander, you mentioned. And you mentioned at the end of the question, which clarified the question for me, which is there are also moderators and patrols and helpers. So the responsibility of a person is different in those situations. Because let's say I'm going to also take an example of a crime scene or about to be a crime scene. So let's say two people are fighting. If I'm a normal citizen, I don't have any responsibility. I can just flee the scene. But if I was a police officer and I have the responsibility, so police officer in this case, in this server will be a moderator or a helper or someone who has the responsibility to let authorities know about the situation. If I'm a police and I have the responsibility, I'm being paid to interfere in those manners because guess what? That's an activity, that's a behavior that we don't appreciate in our community. So it depends on the bystander, right? But according to your responsibilities, if you don't do the responsibility, then obviously you're not being a very responsible citizen, responsible moderator. So yeah.
Well said, Barely Jack. Fiona, were you going to talk?
Yeah, I just have a question, and it is directed towards Barely Jack. How would a moderator know whether the interaction that's happening is that a banter between friends, or is that roasting or slash, I'm not going to use the word roasting, or slash bullying between two individuals? How would a moderator know that if he or she is just observing at that moment?
I think that's a very good question. And if I were a moderator, right, I would probably have a better like judgment. I would have developed a better skill to differentiate between a bullying and a random banter teasing. But from a helper's perspective, or just a member's perspective, or a citizen perspective, I would say a moderator would know if foul language. So there are some, I think, pointers that we can use, right? Anyone can use. So the pointers can be foul language, or hands being used, and just going from stop laughing. So if the people that were teasing stop laughing and just start to personal attack them, right? I think that's where we need to, as moderators or as police people, need to jump in and interfere. I think that's a skill, right? That's a skill that obviously not all of the moderators are going to have. They're going to have it in a degree, right? So a moderator will be very good at identifying between a tease and a bullying scene going on, and someone will not be very good and report falsely that a random teasing session was a bully session, and after clarification will know. But I think that's going to be a skill that a moderator needs to develop. So
So
that's what I'll say.
if I go by what you said, one of the things that might help a moderator to interfere in this situation would be if he or she knows that the behavioral pattern of the people involved, right? What I mean to say by behavioral pattern is like, how does this person behave in the server for a prolonged time? Then you can understand whether this person, whatever is happening, is this friendly banter, or is it something going beyond,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, at the end of
I
the
have a
day, you
follow-up
can.
question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that at the end of the day, you can try to get in the shoe of the person, right? And you have a relatability in you that you can use, and you can like quite close to understanding the situation. And if that comments being made are something that like you don't like to hear from someone, then I don't think that that person enjoyed hearing that in the first place. So you have to have that relatability and getting in the shoe ability as a moderator. That makes sense.
Got it. Yeah, got it. Fine. Thank you.
I want to speak for the moderators. In Barely Jack, what you talked about, the capability or skill set required from a moderator. And also remember that these are not individuals who get paid as a professional. These are members among us who stepped up to take on that responsibility. They are not super humans who have some extraordinary capabilities. And oftentimes, a banter between two individuals is in a public arena. And imagine two friends instead of a bonfire somewhere on a farm in Calgary. Imagine two friends bantering loudly with a loudspeaker in the city hall, for example. And from a moderator's perspective, there are multiple reasons that prevent an individual to express that they are uncomfortable with the roasting or bantering. One social trait for most of the Mouthfuls members are, I want to be considerate and I want to be thoughtful of others' feelings. And I have seen people who were teased or roasted and didn't quite like it, but chose to be the person who can take a joke or can take a dent. I can be not uptight about it. I want to be able to take jokes. And they chose that value to adopt because they see that as a merit, as a good quality to have. So inadvertently, they allowed the teasing or roasting to continue. Even though they may not be comfortable with it, they allow the teasing to continue. As a moderator, I've seen that. I've also seen people who use bantering as a reason for interactions in a public place that may not be the on-topic discussions. So, as a bystander, in Azurk just recently brought up a point, moderators also can't be on scene every single time when that happens. And for a community of our size, right now, given the resource limitation, it really needs the regular members to be able to report anything back to the moderators so that they can look at it. In the roles of the patrols and moderators versus regular members, given how short-staffed we are, we need regular members to be able to step up and help out the moderators. There's a question from Vignac, but we will talk about that after we address Noza's question. Noza, have you found your post?
Yeah, I found it, but I don't know what to add to it. Yeah, I was saying that, I was kind of comparing what was it? That people can have a judgment on, certain extroverts can have a judgment on introverts, like, why are they quiet? Why are they not outgoing and going to parties every Friday or something? And yeah, that's what.
Is judging a bad manner?
It depends. If it can happen in a positive way, but yes, sometimes people use it in a negative way. Like, yeah,
In what ways could judging be positive, and in what ways can judging be harmful?
Like when people are bullying each other, it can be really negative because they have a certain view on people, and then they want that they believe that's true, and yeah, I think that.
And in what ways can judging be beneficial?
When people can provide constructive feedback, and when they have an intention to help others grow, and yeah.
Anyone else want to talk about judgment and judging? Someone from the audience brought up a a thought that's very relevant to good mannerism. And that's from Fitzlord. I think we subconsciously come to know the boundaries. I think manners and good manners is related to personal boundaries. Who wants to talk about what Noza talked about? Judgment and judging. How do you set that boundaries?
I can talk.
Yes, go on.
So, from my own experience, I've actually noticed the difference between constructive judgment and non-necessary judgment that is aiming to harm or look down on people with. So, I would give examples so that it's very much seen or noticed. So, I was, for example, in a gathering where people were to wear, like, for example, nice clothes, and it was like a gala, well, something close to that. And I've seen some people being not even like addressed by people, but like just looked at in a way that is kind of judgmental, and also as to, you know, like just look at them from a very very high pedestal, you know, like, oh my god, what are they wearing? This is embarrassing, or that's what the eye contact kind of like translated into. But then also, the constructive judgment is more of, for example, if I was in an academic environment or an academic building, and I was to present, for example, a presentation in front of my classmates or in front of my teachers, and any, for example, judgment that I had from them was really constructive because it helped me build something better that I wasn't really aware of before. And some of the remarks helped me enhance my vocabulary and also learn how to present or do what I did but better. So this is the this is how we can see how a judgment can be constructive or not.
Those two are great examples. What do you think makes an academic evaluation different from a gossipy comment or evaluation on a person's apparel at the party? If we boil it down, what makes the two scenarios different? May?
Oh, sorry. I didn't think it was addressed to me. Yes?
That's okay.
What was the question?
So the question was, if we boil it down, the two scenarios, academic evaluation versus evaluating a person's appearance at a party. What makes the two different?
Well, the first one wasn't really constructive. It just made you feel less than you are. And it doesn't really going to change the way these people will wear because, you know, they can't really control it. You can't judge something people can't control. As in appearance, as in status, like social status, as in the way of talking, for example, their tone or their voice or whatever they can't change. But you could judge something they can change, which will be beneficial for them in the future. For example, and in the academic field, why is it constructive? Because it's not just going to work on how you're going to present or the grades you're going to have, but also you're going to become well-spoken. You're going to learn some skills that will help you communicate a lot of things, your thinking, your emotions, a lot of things that you wouldn't do by yourself. So I think this is what shows the huge difference between both situations.
Feedback that's constructive and people can take away and apply so that they can take some actions that take them to a more positive direction. Does anyone else want to talk about this?
Added value.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Eris?
yeah, yeah. I mean, there is good judgment and there is bad judgment. Like people sometimes do judge other people based on their culture, their religion, their country, you know. So I think that is a kind of bad judgment. And and the and the good judgment I would say is like when you are judging a product or let's say you are making a decision, you are seeing the bad qualities and good qualities of the product you are buying. So judging in that case would be beneficial. And sometimes like judging yourself, it can be sometimes bad and good, but it tells you like you want to, I mean, when you want to improve yourself, you will judge your decisions so that you will make better decisions next time. I mean, what are the consequences of your decisions? Are those bad and good? You have to judge. So yeah, I mean there can be good judging and bad judging.
Product review is a great example of constructive judgment. Does anyone else want to talk about this?
Yeah, I do have a small point.
Fiona first,
and that is
and
like
then
when
Vienna.
listening. Okay. So I was listening to both May and Aries, and by listening to both of them, I came up with a rule of thumb. And the rule of thumb for me, and this answers the question like, what is the differentiating between academic judgment and, people looking down on you for whatever you're wearing to that gala? So for me, the rule of thumb is this feedback beneficial for me? Or who is it benefiting? For example, if you're going for academic judgment, whenever you face academic judgment, that definitely improves you, right? But when you are receiving those bullying kind of remarks or judgment, it doesn't do any good to you. The only benefit it does is to those people who are somehow getting a social high by putting you down, right? So the rule of thumb for me is like, who does it benefit? Does it benefit me at all? If it doesn't, then they're bullying me. If it benefits me, then that's a constructive feedback. That's a constructive judgment. So that's how I would reframe the whole thing for me.
Vinayak.
Hi everyone. I think that judgment is normal. From my point of view, I think that people judge each other because to have a conversation only. It's not about the other person who is judged because it's all they are just assessing the person, but you have to see that the person who is making the assessment is authentic, or you can say is also good for making assessment. So I think majority of people around us are that they used to judge, but their judgment is not authentic and verified. So I think about it. If you want to be, it's not about judgment. You have to you have to evaluate yourself. Means you have to self-analyze, or you have to self-acknowledge yourself. So it helps you a lot rather than saying on a person to tell you that you are now worthy or everything. Yeah, that's my point.
Sorry, how does it help you if someone says you're not worthy?
It doesn't affect me.
It doesn't affect you.
Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective.
Because I don't rely on them. I self-evaluate myself. I acknowledge myself from my because I am also if they are good at assessing, then I also assess myself. So why not we assess ourselves rather than relying on them for judgment? If they judge, it's normal. They have to because it's a nature of human because they judge.
And your point of
Nothing
view
bad,
is that you have developed a shield to not be affected by other people's judgment.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot. It's almost necessary for any online influencer to shield, to be able to not to be affected by negative comments on their YouTube video, for example. I can understand you.
Yeah. Because people will always talk you behind you. You can't control them or change them. It's impossible to change everyone. So why to change them? Let them be themselves and you do what you do.
Control what you can control and accept the external things that you cannot control. So your stance is that you accept most people's tendency to judge, and you develop a shield, a defensive mechanism not to be affected. Okay, that's very interesting. Does anyone else want to talk about this?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
About the judgment thing. As Vinayak said, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, but he was alluding to the fact that we need to judge. Like, that's normal. Because I think I kind of subscribe to that phrase too, because I think judgment essentially is understanding. We are assessing. He also mentioned the word assessing. We are trying to assess someone's behavior or an outcome or just an incident, right? We are trying to judge. We're trying to assess something according to my own ethical hierarchy. So I have some belief system in my head, and I'm going to go through them one by one and going to assess if the thing is good or bad, right? And I kind of want to point out that, like a lot of other speakers have said, judgment can have kind of two effects. So I can judge someone down and I can judge someone up. So when I judge someone down, it would be to bring them down, right? So before I go into that though, I want to just say that judging is just, coming to conclusion or understanding about some an action that happened. So if I'm pulling someone down, I still don't have all the context of what happened, why that person did the thing. So right. So when I'm pulling someone up, it's kind of comes. There's a intersection between comparison and judgment. So if I'm pulling someone up, I am pulling them up and I'm praising them, and it comes to this area of toxic comparison, and I'm pulling myself down in a way. It's kind of like comparison with a peer and pulling myself down. So I think a good judgment, right? A good judge will be someone who gets close to what reality is. That's what a judge do, right? In a court, the judge has to hear the defendant and the person who's making the case. After hearing both the sides, the judge has to make the most logical and the most reasonable stance. So I think if I'm to make a good judgment, if I want in my life to be a good judge about events, about what happens, about anything, then I have to not let my biases, affect my judgment. I have to understand my biases. I have to understand my privileges, right? My prejudices, and get as close to reality as I can about anything. So that's what a good judge will be.
I agree with what you said, Barely Jack. I want to stick to the discussion topic. The judgment that you have been describing, as I understood, they are judgment that goes through your head, your thinking process. You evaluate the reality. And let's stick to manners. And I believe here the judgment is more externalized. The example being a product review or judging a person's appearance at a party or academic evaluation. Let's stick to the judgment that have been externalized, that's heard by a different individual. And with the full understanding that what you said is absolutely true. And I accept what Vineyard mentioned about judging is a part of us. It's part of us evaluating the external world. And we will be wrapping up. We'll be wrapping up in about 10 to 15 minutes. Cognizant with the fact that Tracy has another event starting in half an hour. So just to have a little bit of a gap between the two.
Nah, don't mind me.
Tracy?
It's a great discussion.
You've been quiet.
It's a great discussion.
What do you think?
I have. I've been I was making prompts for my events.
Okay.
I was making prompts. But yeah, what was the last question that you had? What was the question? Or like what I think of everything in general?
So the topic deviated a little, and we were talking about judging another individual as making a comment, for example, an extrovert judging an introvert, or in academics being judged for your thesis, for example, or at a party being judged for how you look, for example.
Yeah. I think that in those cases,
and going
right,
back to mannerism, what would be, Trizzy, in your opinion, a good manner in terms of whether or not to externalize your judgment, to verbalize your judgment, or if you chose to verbalize your judgment, what would be a good manner?
I think that there's always a good way to say anything, no matter what you want to say. There's always a good way to say it, and there's always a bad way to say it. And depending on how you do it, you could sound terrible. You could sound like you're roasting someone, or you could just sound like you're endearing, right? So let's say, I don't know, maybe someone has like too much, maybe like my grandma, right? She has too much sparkles on all of her clothes. Like she got like her clothes like glistening all the time, and I'm like, well, I think I might get a seizure from that, right? Because I actually have a history of getting seizures. So in that case, at least you're letting them know the reason behind it, right? So you're sounding a lot better than just saying, you should just take it off. It just doesn't look good, or, that's not something that you should wear, or, whatever the case may be. Other cases, like maybe if somebody judges you on your thesis, You could say reasons why you don't like those parts of their thesis, right? At least giving them your thoughts because you've thought behind it, right? At least in that case, they can see where you're coming from. But if somebody can't understand where you're coming from, then it just sounds much, much worse. Much, much worse. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do think that like anything you might want to say, you could say it in a good way. So I would say if you felt like you really needed to say something, then if you make sure not to hurt their feelings, you know, it should be fine. Should be okay. That's all I got though.
Great points, Tracy. One key takeaway for me was from what you said was making your intention known.
So like, you know, I mean, sometimes when people, let's even say like what we were talking about roasting before, right? Or if you feel like you've been disrespected by somebody, usually that's because you don't really understand the reason why they would do something like that to you. Or even more so you feel like they don't understand you, right? So in some ways there's like no communication and there's also no empathy. And in that case it always feels the worst. So you know, that's how I feel.
Thank you, Tracy. Vinyak, you raise your hand. What's on your mind?
Yeah, but you know that you were previously talking about the concept of roasting and bullying. Yes. So I want to add some points. Actually, sometimes what happened that people used to take offense from them. So this is what happened with me also few years back. But now I have you can see now I am just like making a shield. I make the shield. So I think that people when someone roasts you or crack a joke on you, so your first reaction was automatically that to punch that person or to attack on that person because he just hurted your feeling or something that makes you seems unfair. So I think maybe you should see that when you are fixed in that situation. So firstly, you have to see your intuition. What is it is telling to you. So just ignoring that and follow what is happening in that situation would be a much rather better position to have, and not taking that in an offensive way.
It's I think that's a wise advice, and I would probably do that for most of the time. But I wonder though, who should bear that burden of this unpleasant situation where one person is being roasted by another individual? Should the roaster bearing the burden of maintaining and being thoughtful of other people's feelings before roasting? Or should the person be who is roasted bear that burden of just bite your tongue and ignore it and be a good citizen? Who should bear that burden?
It depends on the
Usually-
intention.
Nah, go ahead, bro. Usually speaking, when you talk to somebody, you want your energy to be reciprocated, right? So if you're just roasting somebody, or if you're just using banter, or doing something that's maybe even slightly negative, right? You at least need that energy to come back to you, and at least a little bit. If somebody's making jokes about you, they should make jokes about you back, because at least then in that case, it doesn't feel like it's just a one-way street where you're just taking the blunt of all their jokes. It's more like they're just reciprocating your energy. That's all.
So there should
Like
be
if you meet a
back and
positive-
forth. Like you get a joke and then you receive a joke, right, Trizzy?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
Anyone else?
I could also add something.
May, I heard the May talking.
Yeah, I said I could add something
Yeah.
to what Trizzy said. So, reciprocating the energies is very important, of course, when it comes to this. And, well, answering your question about who shall carry the burden, I'm just going to say both sides. Because, of course, there is someone who would initiate the situation and someone who shall get it and receive it and then deal with it. And the differences in dealing with this situation differs from person to another. But all I can say is, if you're the person, for example, judging or doing any bad behavior to another, it's not necessarily bad to you, right? Like, you don't see it as bad if you're doing it. You just have a different perspective from the receiver. But then that's where I said earlier that you choose the receiver and who it is going to be, because this is also a huge step or a huge thing that you should be thinking about before initiating any situation. You should know to whom you're directing anything you're doing. You should have a little observation before doing anything. So, yeah.
I know you started off by saying both sides should bear the burden, but hearing what you said, really the person who's initiating, who's taking the action, is bearing that activity of judging who that recipient is and whether or not it should be this person, whether or not it should take an action.
Yes, from an overthinker view, this is what you should do or they should be doing normally. But if you're not really an overthinker, you just go with the flow and you're just doing what you feel like doing, then you don't really bury anything. Like, you don't really care about burying anything. So the person who will receive anything you're doing is the one who's going to carry that and, try to either cope with it or attack you back or whatever they're going to do. So this is why I said that it's a burden that is kind of going to be on both sides. But the situation is the thing that actually shows whether or not the receiver or the one who's doing the action is going to carry the burden or not.
Thank you, May. Anyone else? And by the way, this will be the last item because we have another event lining up in about 15 minutes. Barely Jack?
Yeah, so because this is the last, I'll get to the question of the event. Are manners still important? And I would say yes, because first, to give an example, professional football players, right?
Is Barely
they
Jack
play
cracking just
football.
for me or for you as well? Can someone?
No, he is cracking. He
Yeah.
is cracking.
Barely Jack, you are cracking a little. You are audible but cracking. We'll give Barely Jack a moment to fix his audio, and then I'll come back to you, Barely Jack. Try to say something. Okay. Bistai. Azork, you're funny. Fiona, would you like to speak next? So give Barely Jack some time to fix the audio. Feel free to disconnect and reconnect. I'll pull you up. Fiona?
Yes, I was listening to the entire thing, and I'll just share one example of certain things that happened in my office. So, and I think you can correlate it with how things work in Discord community, even when new people on boards, you know. So when I first entered the office, it was 3 months back, and then a lot of people, they have this culture of ragging the newcomers.
Ragging?
So it's like they will tease you, they will RAGGING.
Okay.
So it's like they will criticize you in front of everyone. Supposing you're going for that T spot, right? And they'll make fun of you. And that's the culture of welcoming the newcomer, or that's what people say. When Vinayak was saying that, you know, it's not about what other people are saying, it's about inside you, who you are, right? Not letting other people's word affect you. But what I experience is that it's my new workplace, right? I do want to create a new impression and a good impression, right? And they are trying to put me down while it's becoming a story for a comedic relief to all other people. So how is my image being portrayed to these people? Clearly not so good. I am becoming the blunt of the joke, right? And the reason I'm sharing this is because that's also thanks to Noza.
Is it just me, or did we lose Fiona?
I think that your actions and your behavior should take the
Vinia, sorry, it's not your turn
of
to
your
speak
impression.
yet. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we can't hear Fiona either. Barely Jack, are you back?
Yes, can you hear me?
You're no longer cracking.
Do I still crack? I'm still going to touch on the events topic.
Yes.
And I would say manners are still important because essentially manners are a set of behaviors we expect from someone, from a citizen, from a community member, right? And after all we've talked today, like an hour or more than an hour, we've come to the topic of bullying, trolling, and roasting. When these behaviors are a possibility in any society, right? In any community, there has to be a rule that when these set of behaviors are committed by someone, then further action can be taken. So that's why I think manners are important, so that we have a line where we set to cancel or to not approve of certain behaviors, because bullying and those stuff are a possibility anywhere, right? Doesn't matter where it is. And another example, I'll end this with an example, is that how manners is important is, I just want to say this, I don't know if it relates, but a professional football player, right? They need referees to play. Because guess what? Because they are professional in playing the game, playing with the ball, with the rules, following the rules, right? But they're not necessarily a professional because they are in how much they follow the rule, but in how they play with the rule, right? So a good person will be someone who knows the rule, like a professional player, but he goes out of his way, he uses the rule, right, as a base point, and go about being helpful, being empathetic to people, being sympathetic to people. But a bad football player will be someone who knows the rule, even breaks it, right? Or who goes out of his way to troll, to bully, to tease, and just break the rules that we have. So yeah, that's my distinction between good manners and why we need manners and why I think it's still important.
Because you touched so many important issues that are currently on my mind. And I just want to ask you one follow-up question. And this was discussed briefly before. And we are a community where people come together to build their social skills and communication skills. And there's that inherent understanding of a social skill or communication skill gap. And I've started with a lot of empathy towards people who didn't come to the community with a good set of manners already. I had to try to be empathetic towards them, try to be understanding of their upbringing versus others' upbringing. The question to you, Barely Jack, if you could offer some insight, is how do you bridge the gap between the rules that you've been talking about and the people who come here? We're not talking about the bullies or the obvious rule breakers, the trolls and bullies. We're talking about people who just so innocently don't understand that they're being rude. They are being rude, they've been warned and talked about, but they don't understand or not aware that they're being rude. And obviously one way is this community is not for you. Are there other ways? Barely Jack.
That's a very interesting scenario, and ultimately, as a server owner, as a community member, we're going to come across those behaviors, right? Where someone is not necessarily breaking the rules, right? But they're just not being a good person. So in that case, right, where we don't have any accusations to make, where we can point to, look at this guy, he broke this rule, so we need to ban him. When we don't have any accusations to make to someone, but they're just very unnecessary, like not fun to be around, right? They have a tendency to detract people.
Well, let me come in those cases, Barely, so you can build on what I said.
Sure. We
do have a set of rules that are somewhat at the high bar, hold the members at a high bar. Rules such as be nice, be respectful and polite. That's our first rule number 1. Also, we have a rule about being culturally sensitive, given this is a global community. We do have rules to go by. And let's say they were in the gray areas. They were the people who thought they were being nice and respectful, but they're not. They don't understand what is rude, what's not rude. They don't understand roasting could have its negative effects in addition to its beneficial effects. They don't understand that there is personal boundaries. There are people who you've met on the first day, people you met for a couple of months playing games daily. Now build on what I just said, Barely Jack.
Yeah, you've given me quite a situation. But
how about, you know what? It's unfair. We have 5 minutes, 6 minutes before the next event, and I never jeopardize another host's event. So I'd like to end it with the cliffhanger. And I apologize for that. The session is recorded, and the discussion can continue only after Trizzy's event. Please don't start a chat room, and we never cannibalize each other's events, and the server only has one event at a time. So everyone who has come up to the stage, Barely Jack, Fiona, Noza, Trizzy, May, earlier on, there's Janelle and Eris, and who else? Viniak. So thank you all for your participation. This was super fun. It was a lot easier than I thought. Everyone, please go join Trizzy's event, and I'll wrap it up here 5 minutes before that event. Trizzy is a great host. Please go and support him.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, May. It's so glad to have you.
Thanks for the
I know you just
discussion.
joined the first day. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
I'm glad
Thank
to
you. This was
Yes,
fun.
I agree. It was very spontaneous, and I'm glad to have a
Thank you,
good.
Barely Jack, Trizzy, Noza, Piana. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the audience listening. Thank you for
Thank
everyone.
you.
That was very genuine, and I really enjoyed my time. Thank you.
Lovely. Me too.
Thank you, Ying.
Thank you, Fiona. Bye, everyone. Please go to Trizzy's event. It will start in about 4 minutes. Thank you, everyone who's been
Let's do it.
listening.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.